Hello, today is Wednesday, May 22nd. Welcome to episode 456 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Senior Fellow Morgan Vigna, and I'm joined today by Deputy Executive Director Martha Miller, Advisory Board Member Les Munson, and Fellow Jessica Jones. So today we're going to talk about the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, and there are a lot of directions that we could go today. But before we get into it, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the lives of Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lejinsky, 2 Israeli embassy employees that were murdered Wednesday night as they were attending a young professionals event at the Jewish Museum here in Washington, D.C. I had a lot of friends attending that event, and it could have been them. Anti-Semitism is a sickening hatred, and we must do everything we can to combat it. May Sarah and Yaron's memories be a blessing. So today's pod topic is sadly reflective of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. In recent weeks, Israel has launched a new offensive in Gaza and has come under increased pressure by the international community to end hostilities and allow humanitarian food supplies into the territory. This week, the UK announced it was suspending free trade negotiations with Israel and was leveling new sanctions targeting settlements in the West Bank. This came a day after the UK, France, and Canada, among others, condemned Israel's handling of the war in Gaza and its actions in the West Bank. Israel has justified its strikes, arguing that it is targeting the remaining terrorist threats inside of Gaza. And just in case anyone needs a reminder, Gaza is governed by Hamas, a U.S. designated terrorist organization. Meanwhile, the Trump administration, which would very much like Israel to end the conflict, presumably so he can build the Gaza Riviera, is reportedly working on a post-war Gaza plan that would relocate up to 1 million Palestinians from Gaza to Libya. In exchange, the United States would release up to $1 billion in frozen funds. No final agreement has been reached on this, though. Relatedly, the Trump administration is holding talks with Iran today on Iran's nuclear weapons program. And this comes amid the news that the United States has received intelligence suggesting that Israel is preparing to strike Iranian nuclear facilities. So, y'all, a lot of different directions, lots going on in the Middle East, a lot of interweaving and cross-cutting issues here. Jess, let's go to you first. What do you make of all of these movements going on? Clearly, Iran's nuclear weapons program is a major security threat for Israel. It's one that the Trump administration has taken particular interest in within his first 100 days. Please give me your view on sort of what direction you think this is going to go.
Yeah, I think, that is a really interesting topic. It's one of the many areas that the Trump administration quickly came in and was trying to, make a deal on, right? Witkoff has been dispatched across the world, both to Israel-Gaza situation crisis as well as Iran. You see potentially Israel perhaps going its own way. Stories indicate that there's, the U.S. intelligence community is tracking signs that Israel might strike Iran's nuclear facilities. I think it's interesting to think about whether Israel takes those moves, whether the Trump administration emboldens or restrains Israelis, calculations as they try to move forward. Of course, Trump and Bibi in the Oval Office seem very close, but President Trump is known for kind of his one-man driven foreign policy, right? He makes decisions on his own. We've seen stories that he's had just limited intelligence briefings. He really just kind of seems to decide from the gut. He is shaking up the NSC, and instead of it coming out with policy recommendations, what it traditionally does, it's more about execution of President Trump's decisions already. And so he's decided, it remains to be seen as he moves forward trying to make a deal with Iran. Israel's planning for that not working, right? And what I find really interesting is we are now seeing in real time, the stories are the switching from the White House where there's a deal or not a deal, which we see with Ukraine, the priorities shifting, and our parties and partners and allies having to quickly change what they're doing in response to the White House's decisions. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens if Israel moves forward and the U.S. is not brought in. What happens then? There's obviously most likely going to be regional fallout, whether it comes with Hezbollah in Lebanon, whether it's Syria, the Trump administration is pushing for Saudi normalization of relations with Israel. That will obviously be on a standstill if Israel strikes Iran. So there's a lot of implications here. So it remains to be seen, and we'll see perhaps Witkoff can pull out a deal. It seems to be at a standstill over enrichment, but who knows? Something could happen. There's talks today.
Yep. So, Martha, Israel has really been fighting a multi-front conflict here, frankly, since October 7th. I mean, you've got, the ongoing conflict with Hamas. Clearly, we saw, Israel take a stand and really push back Hezbollah in Lebanon. We've got, Yemen and the Houthis continuing to muck about and fire missiles into Israel. Of course, all of these groups are backed by Iran, right? And so I'm wondering from your perspective, as the United States is negotiating with Iran today, those talks are primarily about Iran's nuclear enrichment for a weapons program. How do you think terrorism and Iran's support for Iranian proxies plays into this?
Look, that should be a key consideration here. I mean, obviously, President Trump himself has said that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And I think, I know that he's shown some level of openness for a civil nuclear program or civilian nuclear program. But I mean, the bottom line is, Iran should not have their hands on centrifuges. Iran may not make a nuclear bomb while Trump is president, but then what happens after Trump is no longer president? What will happen at that time? I think the United States cannot abide Iran getting hold of a nuclear weapon. Look, Iran is posing an existential threat not only to Israel, but to the United States. We have troops on the ground in the Middle East. We have, commerce that is very important to our economy going through the Red Sea. It's also important to our European allies. The Houthis are not only attacking Israel, but also attacking global commerce. That affects America's finances, our pocketbooks, and that is not where we want to see this going. We cannot have Iran strengthened in any way. I do think President Trump's Middle East effort was very interesting. It certainly was circling the wagons around Iran by negotiating deals with its Arab neighbors. And certainly the recognition, lifting sanctions on Syria was also a very interesting move, piercing that Shia crescent that Iran has always been focused on. But I think, the Trump administration, does have a history of not holding back. During his first term, we know that he actually did take action in Syria against Soleimani. So I think he means it when he does threaten with the stick. I do question whether carrots get us anything. I don't think they do. I think we've seen historically that carrots get us nothing with Iran. So we'll see. I mean, I think Israel is also not crazy for considering taking action themselves. So there's a lot at stake today and going forward. I hope the Trump administration will stay strong and continue to support what President Trump himself has said about not allowing Iran to get a nuclear missile.
Yep. Thanks, Martha. So Les, over to you. I want some hot takes here. It is, after all, a Fun Friday. So give us your take on ongoing events in the region.
Well, I think as President Trump kind of goes through his engagement with the region, and as he kind of draws a ring around the issues he's
I see what you're doing, Les.
Do you, Jones? Yeah.
An inside joke, folks.
That's good. Inside joke. Yeah. Figure it out, people. Figure it out.
Coming news.
Okay. So in all seriousness, I think let's pull back here. The idea that the only thing we care about with Iran is that it doesn't have a nuclear weapon is wrong. We care about other things as well. It is, of course, critical they don't have a nuclear weapon. It is also critical they don't fund proxy forces in the region that are at war with Israel and with the United States and with our other allies in the region. So there are two very big things going on here, and focusing on just one is a tremendous mistake. And so we need to just in our conversations here on this podcast, and then just generally see holistically what's going on. And if the crazy soap opera negotiations over a potentially new verified Iran nuclear deal keep Iran on the back foot on its nuclear program, great. If there's some sort of preliminary arrangement where Iran is not going to take any further steps with its nuclear program, very good. But we also need to keep our eye on the ball with respect to these proxy forces. Israel did the world a favor by defeating Hezbollah, by largely defeating Hamas, and by taking out the Houthis on occasion. So it is the one that has made the difference in the Middle East. And for some reason now, because of its success, is now kind of pushed a little bit in a corner by Sunni Arab states and the United States, which is, and again, Trump administration policy, not necessarily that different from Biden administration policy at the end of the day. So let's keep our eye on the ball here, which is, it's not just the nuclear program. If we just focus on that, we're going to get razzmatazed the way the Obama administration did 10 years ago when they gave a ton of cash to the Iranians, which they used to fund all their proxy forces in the region, which caused all of the trouble that we've seen for the last few years. So big picture, let's keep our eye on both things at the same time. Otherwise, we're not doing our jobs.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I very much agree with you in this sense, in that I cannot believe that we still have to make the argument that Israel has the right to defend itself. Yes, the October 7th attacks took place, nearly 18 months ago. But newsflash, there are still hostages in Gaza, right? There is still a terrorist threat in Gaza. And as long as that remains, and until Israel gets its hostages released, this is going to continue to be a festering sore in the region. Israel has every right to get its people back. Israel has every right to protect and defend its sovereign territory. And so I think that the United States needs to support Israel in those efforts. This administration has been very proactive in working with Israel to get Americans and their remains home. The work there is not done yet. And so the United States and the Trump administration in particular should continue to have Israel's back on this. And that includes fighting a multi-front war if need be, to ensure that Israel's territorial sovereignty and frankly deterrence in the region is restored. So with that is a wrap. Thanks so much to Kelly Crowley, Taylor Lane, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Monday is Memorial Day, and we'll be off. Join us on Wednesday, May 28th, for our next episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. Fault Lines is now on YouTube, so check out a channel for today's episode. If you like what you heard, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.